I'm Darrell MacLaine. I'm a voice actor, impressionist, composer, and clown-stroke-daft bugger. My favourite Doctor Who story is The Chase from 1965.
Well, greetings. Hello, Fact fans. You'll have noticed I've moved position on the sofa. That's because the denizens of Hadoke Towers have been for a walk and now they're drying off and trying to have a snooze whilst I talk through episode 3 of The Chase. And to do that, I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Well, yes, welcome. I've moved sofa. I had a slight technical issue with the previous episode where this camera, podcast listeners, I have 2 cameras. You can see these on video on YouTube if you haven't found them. I'm not quite sure how I'm releasing them yet, but that's all part of the excitement of the unfolding text and the developing scenarios of happy times and places. But this just cut out for some reason halfway through, and I'd done a lot of, I know my marks, I'd done a lot of acting to camera that is now lost forever. Anyway, in checking what had gone wrong, and I still don't know, I did notice I look a bit of a mess. I think perhaps I could have done better in certain aspects of my career if I'd been a bit more conscious of my appearance. But who cares? I look a bit of a mess, but I'm trying to have fun. And if there's not a better metaphor for the chase, I don't know what is. It's a funny old hybrid, isn't it? Of this, again, they're so jolly, this TARDIS crew, which I think under some circumstances might grate. But they invest the whole thing with a lot of fun. That's a great moving camera there from Martin, and Ian's got a painful head. So, Flight Through Eternity. That's an interesting title. It's full of sort of all-encompassing titles that don't necessarily have anything to do with what's going on in the story. Things like The End of Tomorrow. Well, you could call any Doctor Who story The End of Tomorrow because there's always threat, isn't there? They're always doing a flight through eternity. I mean, that could be a title for Doctor Who itself. But I like that. It's a bit more mythic than, it goes through phases, doesn't it, Doctor Who? There's the mid era where it's just the name of the planet they're on quite often. Logopolis, Frontios, which I always found a bit bland. I was like, oh, come on, the Hungry Earth's much better than Frontios. But Flight Through Eternity, yeah, I rather like. It's a nice high shot from ambitious Richard Martin, who I'm forgiving for the things that don't work. And I don't know if this works, this funky jazz music. I like Dudley Simpson a lot, he's a legend. I like shots of the TARDIS in flight, but this is a very early, is it in fact? It is, isn't it? This story is the first time we see the TARDIS in flight in that regard. And there's another cutout thing doing the business to make an arresting visual, a cutout Dalek, but I think with a small 60s telly and the sort of reception they had then, I think that would have looked fine. It looks okay now. I think the design's brilliant. I love all the spinny things on the. I think in fact I have a sticker of that from somebody's Redbubble store, because I've got a door panel that's looking a bit bland. But the panel up to the attic is looking a bit bland, and it looks like a bit like a hole because I painted it a dark colour. So I wanted a flash of colour on it, a flash of white on it, to show that it's actually solid rather than that there's a gap in the way to the attic. So it's on my to-do list, is to put the spinny TARDIS wall control on that. Oh, there's a funny sort of, is he a dummy Dalek at the back? Somebody will know. Gavin Rymel will have he has various websites and videos where he talks in detail about every Dalek prop. So I'm not even going to compete. I've asked Gavin to contribute to this podcast, and he's preparing a story, not a Dalek story though, but he is the Dalek guy. Ian looks like he's in. He looks like he's in episode 1 of The Mind Robber. Gosh, Ian and Barbara in both rocking the old roll neck look there. But yeah, Ian looks like Jamie does when he's had his personality taken away from him and he's turned all white in the void of the Mind Robber. So I'm sure somebody clever could chop Ian out of this and place them in the white void of the Mind Robber and create some sort of world of fiction escapade for Ian Chesterton. Barbara's eating shit. Barbara looks like she's vaping, because I've got half an eye on this and half an eye on the camera and half an eye on making sure that the sound is working. Barbara, that's a very juddery shot of the Empire State Building. Barbara looks like she's vaping. I've got a feeling they had to find the stock footage of this and find a clean version or something about the stock footage of this that caused a bit of a headache, or maybe didn't. There's an anecdote. I recall something that might have happened and might not have done, but something has chimed. So this is, we assume, 20th century, modern day, current day Earth. There's no attempt to make it a period piece. So aside from Planet of Giants, this is the first sort of contemporary Doctor Who story to do. Oh, I like the rather rotund extra nudging somebody out of the way. That's a lovely attention to detail. And this is Arnie Gordon, who was a South African actor, but he's decided to, and he's Rostar in The Web Planet. So he spent his previous Doctor Who talking eyes, and now he's playing the tour guide as Columbo in a bus conductor's hat. Which I kind of like. The film looks gloriously cleaned up in this restoration. So whatever the thing is I alluded to that I can't remember, that they did the thing very well. I do like the sort of the hats and the specs and the sort of costuming policy for the tourists who all have their own thing going on. And all hail Peter Purvis. I love that he's just knocked Peter Purvis out of the way. I've never really noticed the big guy before. I mean, I knew there was a big guy extra, but I didn't realise he was quite so belligerent. And the young guy there, I should find out about them. I'll probably, do you know what I'm probably going to spend my Saturday now doing, is looking up those extras and finding out if they're dead. Because that's what I do. Oh dear. This is Peter Purvis, a Doctor Who legend and a very nice man, who I have to say does give it his. Even the litter has got litter around the litter. There's some nice attention to detail here on the Empire State Building. But yes, this scene makes it very difficult when you're. I remember I was writing something about the War Machines for Doctor Who magazine, and the War Machines is, the first story set in 20th century modern day Earth, which has become a norm, but for the 60s and certainly the Hartnell era was, unusual. But you can't say that now, because there's this segment here which could well be. It's not stated, I don't think, although. He refers to Chai and Brody, doesn't he? So he refers to a television program, but and it's likely that it's 20th century Earth, but it's not a story set in 20th century Earth. But again, you can't use that shorthand for the War Machines anymore, lest somebody say, I think you'll find. So when you've got a limited word count, you have to couch it in various parentheses in order to bat off somebody calling you to order, which means you get to write less interesting things about Doctor Who, because you have to, as I say, a lot of the writing of things is anticipating complaints from people who could take you to task, or be generous and sort of give you the benefit of the doubt and know what you mean. But have you met any Doctor Who fans? So apart from Planet of Giants, which again isn't about being set in the modern day, it's about being small. This is until we get to the War Machines, this is our little sojourn into the modern day. And Peter Purvis is great. He's going for it, and thank goodness he is, because otherwise it would. Why would we want to spend any time with this guy? is basically a comic interlude with a hick. And I can sort of see... It's odd, though, to think, isn't it? He comes and does this, very bold comic turn. 3 weeks later, he's a regular, playing a totally different character. And you sort of say, oh, they wouldn't do that these days. Free Management was good in an episode and they liked her and brought her back. Although it was a break between... There was at least a season break. But it was the next... it was a couple of episodes later. It was the next story. So perhaps things don't change as much as we think they do. And certainly, luck, but also capitalising on that luck. He got a nice little part, and he obviously was nice to work with. And he had a bash. And Morton Dill, I think, is good fun. It's genuinely funny. And I think he means it to be. It's not funny because it's he has pitched it with intent to go where it is. Oh dear, I'm laughing like Elaine Page on Sunday if I'm not careful. And I'm not sure that it is wise to have somebody laughing at a Dalek. I mean, I can see why, but that's great, isn't it? You never see a Dalek go 360. I think my friend Peter told me that's the only time you see a Dalek go. It's eye stuck, go all the way round. It may have done it in the modern series. I've not watched that as much because I've had. When did I first see this? When I was about 10. I've had 36 years to watch this over and over again. The new series is only 15 years old. But actually the Dalek does look, because it's squat and he's tall, even though he's sending it up, it looks quite scary. But I think that this does two series. One, it shows that Terry Nation and Dennis Spooner and Richard Martin have kind of gone, well, we've done the Daleks being scary. What else can we do? Let's have them coughing at sand, and let's have somebody not be scared of them but laugh at them. I know where they're coming from. I'm not sure it's wise, even though it's very entertaining. And the Dalek held its own by that. Really, it was inscrutable, and it did the thing with the head, but it didn't kill him. Now, it's almost like it's going, he's a comedy character. It would spoil the tone if I killed him. And of course now he's going to get committed to an asylum. I mean, no. Has that tour guy got a fag? He's holding something between his fingers. What's he got there? I don't know. No, maybe not. Fags in Doctor... The fat guy has a cardigan, though. I should have a checklist, shouldn't I, for fags and cardigans in Doctor Who. I think I probably know of a fan group who'd refer to themselves as fags and cardigans, but that's a whole different thing. I like the break on the Empire State Building, even though I'm not sure I should. It's a guilty pleasure. And should there be any such thing as a guilty pleasure? Because what you're essentially saying is, I like something other people might judge me for liking. That's essentially what you're saying. If you like something, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Just like it and don't apologise. So, yeah, everybody, I like the Empire State Building. I like the fact that the tour guide is a Menoptera playing Columbo. And this is... And again, when I read about this, the punchline to this sequence, that was very exciting to me. The idea that Doctor Who could have a conduit to Abraham Lincoln. This was a Doctor Who story that had Abraham Lincoln. It had the Beatles. It solved the mystery of... Spoiler alert. I mean, if you're watching this and you haven't watched The Chase yet, stop immediately. It's one of my favourite things in commentaries when somebody goes, "Can I say anything about this scene, or will it spoil it for the viewer?" You just go, "No." If anybody is listening to the commentary before they've watched the story, they deserve to have it ruined for them. So, folks, this is the Mary Celeste. But you know, I had books of, you know, the Piccolo Book of Mysteries, I think, and it was a thing we talked about. You know, I think, you know, mentioned at school and you know, around the dinner table, the mystery. We loved a mystery, the mystery of the Devil's Footprints, the mystery of the Mary Celeste. And so Doctor Who having the Beatles and Abraham Lincoln and the Mary Celeste, even the Empire State Building was a thing. I know we take stuff for granted now because we can see pictures and we can go places more than we could. The Empire State Building is an amazing thing. Well, did I read recently somewhere that it's not the Empire State Building? I'm not going to go there. That is Dennis Chinnery, who is Garman in Genesis of the Daleks. So he comes back and is far more serious with the Daleks. And he's also Professor Sylvester in the Twin Dilemma. So he's run the whole gamut of Doctor Who. No longer with us, but a nice actor. He's also in that episode of The Prisoner where nobody says anything. Many happy returns. Nobody says anything in English for something like the first 40 minutes. So he and John Lorrimore are German gunrunners. That's a great idea, isn't it? That's a really sort of disconnecting idea, that episode of The Prisoner where what dialogue there isn't in the English language until I think the prisoner gets home, or is it home? Brilliant. I'm not here to talk about The Prisoner, although I can if I want, can't I? Comedy knocking on the head, because this would not be as amusing as it looks. Although you didn't give it an awful lot of welly there, Maureen, but that's because of health and safety and no stunt doubles. And we get Ian comedy knocked on the head. I'd forgotten. I forget we get comedy concussion, which Ian, William Russell, is very good at. He's I'm terribly sorry, poor old hapless Vicky. Oh, William Russell is doing very good comedy concussion there. So yeah, the idea that Doctor Who would solve the mystery of the Mary Celeste was one of those things that when you read about it, you went, oh, of course, what a brilliant idea. And it must be the sort of, I imagine them sort of sitting around, you know, the table in the 60s where, you know, smoking pipes and being clever and sort of going, what can we do for the children this week? You know, let's have the TARDIS and the Daleks arrive on the Mary Celeste. Because that's a hot topic. Oh, by the way, if you can hear a groaning noise, it's not the TARDIS, it's not a Maya beast, it's a snoring cockapoo called Bernard, who's back from his walk and sitting where I was before, which is why I've changed my position. If you're listening to the podcast, you'll just have to imagine it. The captain here is David Blake Kelly, who is also in The Smugglers, and is also, I think it's now been changed on Wikipedia, sometimes wishfully changed to being David Kelly, the Irish actor who's, you know, Mr. O'Reilly in Fawlty Towers and The Man from Robin's Nest. David Kelly and David Blake Kelly, both Irish actors, but both different, which is why they have different names and don't look the same. But reference resources on the internet don't necessarily count such things. Patrick Carter only died a couple of years ago, and he was in Quatermass 2, and I always meant to write to him. He was still turning up in things like London's Burning when I was younger, playing the bosun. Character actor, did loads of stuff. Excellent sideburns. Cardigans, fags and sideburns in Doctor Who, I'd love to do a tally of. And again, I probably know a few fan groups that consist of cardigans, fags and sideburns. Obviously that water is quite still, although that adds to the mystery, of course. The Mary Celeste was, I think, in still waters. That's nice. I like the roundy thing turning into a scanner, which is a round shape, because the Daleks have roundels and round eyes, and there's a bit of spare signal Harrow around going there that they've thrown in for good measure. I think that looks like a close-up of some of the title sequence tests, but I could be wrong. I was just sent them the other day. Willoughby, Douglas Ditter. Yes, don't know anything about him. It's a good name though, isn't it? Douglas Ditter. Yeah, why don't I know anything about Douglas Ditter? I presume I've looked him up and tried to find him and forgotten. I'm presuming he's probably no longer with us, otherwise he'd be on my list of people that I don't think are no longer with us that I've never found. But I can't recall offhand. And of course then we go into a film sequence, which is rather impressive with all of this stuntage. Although for something that is effectively in place as a comedy sequence, and considering we know what happens, that's a woman with a baby who's falling into the sea and is going to die. I think perhaps. That's an excellent stunt there, though, and a nicely shot from above. That's really well done. So all the actors have had to come to be on film, but I do question the comedy value of a woman and baby perishing at sea. I mean, call me old-fashioned. It's interesting that the Daleks are quite reluctant to exterminate people in this episode. They just sort of allow people to jump to their own deaths, or in the case of Peter Purvis, do a comedy sequence. I like the way he takes his hat and jacket off. He's like the captain. Everyone else panics a bit and either falls in or jumps in. But because he's the captain, he takes his hat and his jacket off to at least do the escape with some sort of formality. I think that's a nice touch from the actor. But we basically there have mass death played for. Well, is it played for? The actors don't really play it for comedy, but I think the story wants us to find it quite funny. Jack Pitt, who we at last get to see, he's been a venom grub, and I think he's a garbage cone later on. Names to conjure on your CV. And he was a sort of predator. There is an interview with him on Keith Mythmakers did an interview with him, which I was very pleased about, because he'd never been interviewed in Doctor Who magazine and stuff like that, and they found him and dug him out, and he recalled sharing digs, I think, with Hartnell, and it's nice. Oh, there's a broken Dalek. Dalek's got a broken bit on it there. They're starting to go through the wars, but yes, it's nice that Jack Pitt, having been a monster, gets his face in shot, even if it's just, you don't quite know why there's a lagging cabin boy who gets to jump off camera, not even on film, but it just adds a little coda to this scene. And this is actually quite creepy with the picture, fading between shot, and now you can hear the rope, and you've got the silence. That's very atmospheric, and the reason for that is and the untouched meal, and the reason for that is, oh no, that's not an untouched meal, but we did see one earlier, is because we are on a boat called the Mary Celeste. We still haven't got there yet. As I'm talking, I keep waiting for them to show the Mary Celeste. I remember being quite surprised when I saw that, because I thought it was Marie. I still think it might be, but I could be wrong on that. It might be spelt two different ways. Look it up. I don't have all the answers, but I remember certainly thinking, oh, have they spelt that wrong? And I think I then did look it up, and I think it's okay to be either. I don't know. Look it up. If this inspires you to read about the mystery of the Mary Celeste. Mary Celeste. But I like that. It's like Pudding Lane. It's like the explanation for why crows say doctor. Anything that sort of intrudes into our real world, or has a cheeky wink at a mystery that we have, I rather like. It makes Doctor Who seem important. Although when Doctor Who's too important, I don't like it. I don't want him to be a legend thread through time. I want the Doctor, him or her, them to be. I want them to be a plucky amateur that just happens to save the universe through wits and a good nature and reading a lot. Journey into Terror. Again, that's one of those all-encompassing episode titles coming next. They might call it Stuff Happens in Space and Time. Oh, top billing to Arnie Gordon there, because it's order of speaking. I wonder if David Blake Kelly got a credit in the Radio Times. I don't know if he got a... I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Only I will care. But I might go and look that up now. That was jolly. So it was Empire State Building and Mary Celeste. What is Darrell going to choose? I keep forgetting I've got to choose something. So I have to pause the video first. It's not a video, it's a DVD. I will say video till the day I die. So now that I have cessated the cassette, what has Darrell chosen? I've got to choose something before Darrell chooses, which is good because it buys me time to find it. I've got it. It's got to be. Now he's not choosing specific things from episodes, I don't think. So he might just choose the sort of general comedy feel or something. I think Peter Purvis. I think the fact that he entered that with such gusto and did enough to get cast in a regular 3 weeks later is a testament to an actor who I think had been out of work for a bit and he'd been turned down. He'd auditioned for The Web Planet and hadn't got the part. So I think the lesson there is, a disappointment might lead to something else that ultimately leads to a better part. And if you are, an artist, a performer, whatever you want to call them, we don't have to be so highfalutin as to say artist, a creator, a turn, a vagabond, a strolling player, somebody who just wants to make stuff. It can be hard and it can be full of disappointment. But Peter Purvis auditioned for a role for a director. He didn't get the role. He was spared having to be trussed up in a harness and flown over the studios dressed as a space moth, and instead comes back a few weeks later to play a stupid hillbilly. And probably, it's only one episode. I could have been in 3 episodes as the space moth. But then it leads to him being a regular, and it leads to the fact that still to this day, people talk to him and he's very gracious and happy to talk about Doctor Who, and it's still a big part of his life. So I like that. And so I'm not just picking his performance, I'm picking the story of what got Peter Purvis to there and the flight through eternity that it took him on that reaches us to now and beyond. What does Darrell say?
Reason number 3, go right time 3, that I love The Chase is its light entertainmentness, its variety, it's a sketch show. There's no other Doctor Who story quite like this. Now, obviously, Terry Nation came from a comedy writing background, more so than a sci-fi writing background. That was kind of a side thing that got out of hand. And he really tries it on in The Chase to just make it a comedy show full of sketches. There's the stuff on the time-space visualizer. There's all, the episodes later on, The Haunted House, A Skyscraper, The Mary Celeste. It's very sketchy, and there's something refreshing about The Chase, which is as refreshing as watching a sketch show. You get all these things, and it's just trying to delight you and make you laugh. I mean, it's not funny. It's not really funny on purpose at any point, sad to say. I don't think there's any... Maybe The Thick Dalek is quite funny, but it has the same energy as a comedy programme, and I love it for that.
I nearly chose the comedy, didn't I? But I got distracted. I went to the comedy of Peter Purvis, and then it metamorphosed into his story. So I like to think Darrell and I did slightly have contact for a moment there. And I love the fact that's so forgiving as well. It's not very funny, and yet it's trying. And people might say, well, you'll have a lot of sympathy with that, Toby. And it's making me, very kindly disposed towards it, actually, because, and it's funny, isn't it, when people get annoyed with comedians or are rude to comedians on Twitter, or use anybody that says so-called comedian or comedian inverted commas when talking to somebody who is an actual comedian, is an automatic sin bin for me. because actually they're trying to be funny and using an old and easily dismantleable trope. But anybody that, reserves their ire for somebody that's trying to make you laugh, I mean, even if they fail, the intention, at least they're trying to make you laugh. They're not trying to bump into you like a rotund extra on the Empire State Building. They're not trying to nick your wallet. They're trying to entertain. And if they fail, well, at least their intentions are pure, which, is all that this is about. Having a bash to lighten your day and make you connect with the things that you like about Doctor Who, the good things, the not very funny things, the not very funny times and places of Doctor Who. We'll go to another one of those next time. But for now, thanks for watching and listening.